I gained a lot of respect. I've never had an opportunity to have a conversation with Francis Ngannou, and sometimes the language barrier, right, and us having to work through to understand some of the things that he's saying and the way that he's communicating them, the intelligence can be lost. And the fact that he was standing on something couldn't be lost. What stuck out to me was he said he was prepared to not fight again. He was prepared to have his demands, have his requirements, and if those were not met, he was okay with moving on with the rest of his life. I believe that's a powerful position to be in. And when you are in that position, you can get a deal done like Francis Ngannou has been able to negotiate for himself. And I think this is awesome for Francis, but I believe this is big for fighters as well. And the one thing that always happens in the NFL, DC, is you see these precedents set, and it's up on the next guy to get a contract, or it's on the next up that has an opportunity to be the best at the position to make sure they continue to push contract negotiations forward, that they continue to raise the bar, that they use the people that they're on par with to also be a part of their negotiation so they can keep furthering the game or furthering the organization. And now it's going to be on the next guy who's a big-time fighter like Francis Ngannou, which, DC, if we're being honest, Francis Ngannou is not the biggest star for there to ever be in the MMA, but he was a guy that stood on something, and in standing on that, he set a new height and a new precedent for the next fighter that's coming through that may have the sort of leverage that Francis Ngannou had going into these negotiations.
You know, Ryan, I want to make sure that we communicate to the world that this is not a normal situation, right? Because we're talking about the heavyweight champion. You always knew that if anyone was going to set the standard for what is out there as a free agent, it was going to be Francis. The moment he announced that he was going to be moving on, you knew that the standard in the bar would be set by Francis. So any athlete can't just go, I'm going to go and do something different because Francis Ngannou did something different. They have to have leverage. And ultimately, that leverage Francis had was winning that fight in Anaheim and beating Cyril Gane and walking away with the championship. And he used it to try to accomplish something good. He feels like he can elevate the other fighters through his actions. Now, Ryan, Francis has a stipulation in his contract. At least it is thought to be that even his opponents are getting a bump in pay. It's not just Francis getting money. The guy that gets to fight Francis gets a payday that may even equal out to $1 million. Like, there are guys that never would make $1 million. But if you step in there with Francis Ngannou, you could make $1 million. There are very few people that can move the needle like that for themselves and for their opponents. Now, you think UFC. There is no organization that has talent on par with the UFC as a whole. But there are outliers out there in the world where guys can really compete. You're seeing that now in Bellator. You saw it in Strikeforce, because when all the Strikeforce people came, they became champions. Myself, Ronda Rousey, Luke Rockhold, Robbie Lawler. All these fighters came over and became champions. So we always could compete. I think they have these outliers. So to believe that Francis Ngannou is going to fight lesser competition is going to be very, it'll be difficult to prove, because it is tough out there. There are fighters out there that can challenge you out in the world of mixed martial arts. As a whole, UFC is where it's supposed to be. Yeah. But Francis Ngannou has set a new standard. Kind of feels like go play less golf for more money with Live Golf without, all the issues with the Saudis, So big deal for Francis Ngannou. Congratulations to the former UFC heavyweight champion on really setting a new standard for what is out there in the free agent market. It feels real, Ryan, after this one. It makes MMA feel real after seeing what Francis Ngannou just did.
It's now a competition, right? It's because it's to me what Nike's always been. It's what ESPN kind of gets to be. The UFC is negotiating from a stance of leverage, because they understand that you'll never have as many eyes, you'll never have an opportunity for the type of celebrity and fame that the UFC can create. And I believe that when they're negotiating, they negotiate from that point. Now, with Francis Ngannou moving on, PFL understanding to get someone of Francis's caliber, you have to make sure you sweeten the pot and sweeten the deal, and they were able to do that.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.